you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, with half an hour, I present or I prepared a few models for you guys to look at, and also if you want to have those later or tomorrow, it's not a big deal. They're basically part of my lecture models, so when you want to have those, look into it, play with it, completely free. Just a question, how many of you use modifiers? For example, the mirror, curve, for bending? Okay. For example, or where is it? Where is it? Here's one. One of the first modeling jobs I give my students is about making a knife, just simply using subdivided surfaces. And that is, for example, the normal knife. And very nice part about the curve tool is... Oh, what's wrong here? Hold on 1 second. Yeah, that's the way it should be. For some reason, they moved. But what you can see, I used a curve and applied to the knife the curve modifier, and then instead of actually deforming my knife, I actually use the curve to deform my object. And I could, for example, straighten the front part in case I want to have the blade more straight. And then in the back, I could start playing with the knife handle. And with setting the where is it? Control points, vector. With setting the control point to vector, whatever I do on one side of the handle doesn't affect the other side. So here only the hand part is being used. And that one basically you can attach to or apply to many parts, as it from a character you want to basically deform, or for example if you want to make model sunglasses, you can model them nice and straight, and the shades have a slight arc. Those areas you can use it. So they really like this tool basically to quickly explore different variations instead of just always having a different model job. Because you could even model different curves, and the curve modifier just simply exchange the curve name, and instead of having multiples. Oh yeah, that's for example one of the chairs. They do pipe chairs, normal chairs, go later into classical chairs, and in particular when you start getting serious about modeling, I would never try to work on something which is way too difficult for the beginning. Just take small steps, and best is when you even have an object you can model from, so you don't have to do it out of your imagination. And This is, for example, a simple chair. It's basically made out of cubes. You can see on the inside their faces are extruded upwards, so you get this feeling of having a solid wire frame and then a thinner sheet where you sit on. What I find sometimes very annoying with subdivided surfaces is everything is completely nice and smooth. So if you want to really have a razor sharp edge, you have to either add 2 loop cuts and scale them all together. A different possibility is actually, for example, here I have just a face, and they recently added a tool which is called split. So I just merged all the points back together so it's solid, and you can select whatever edge, and if you press Y for split, it basically disconnects that face, and this way you can have perfectly sharp edge wherever you need it. Could, for example, select a face here and do it, and can you see it on the screen? Yeah, okay, there. But it's still watertight. There's no gap in between, because a face which is separate shares the same edge as, for example, the rest of the mesh. And particular very useful tool is always to use the mirror. So you just work only on 50% of your model when it's symmetrical. Just make use of the modifier and let the rest do Blender for you. And there's also, you guys, are you aware of the hierarchy inside the modifier stack? The hierarchy inside the modifier stack? See here, first, yeah, first you have the mirror, and then you have the subsurf. It's simply, think about logical. You want to smooth an object, but you want to smooth basically the object when it's done modeled. However, you start modeling 50% only, so 1/2. So the mirror modifier has to come first, because with the mirror modifier you get one complete mesh, and that complete mesh with the subsurf then you smooth. So if you do it first if you first smooth it, then that result is being mirrored. Sometimes when you use a mirror and you start seeing that, for example, it doesn't flow nicely in arc, there's somewhere a pinch or a sharp crease where it mirrors. That's most of the time because of the hierarchy. So that's a very often overlooked requirement. And for example, a different chair is this one they model. Do you guys know that solidifier script in Blender? For example, this one right now is just a surface. It doesn't have any volume. Now to give it a volume, you could start extruding the faces and then push and pull, so they all have the same even distance from each other. But that's a lot of work and provides a very high chance of actually messing it up. So if you go into edit mode and select all your mesh, go to scripts, and there's recently a script called solidify selection. Of course, Now you have also to understand in which dimensions are you working. Don't ask us the thickness minus or positive basically means which direction it is adding the surface. The option skin sides it means basically like when you have one face and you solidify it, it also fills in the space in between, or you have the two surfaces alone. And right now I don't know which direction it goes. Okay, it went that direction. Actually I wanted it the opposite. So I go back, scripts, solidify, and then make it positive, but also lower the value. And because I'm using the mirror tool, you see that there are some problems, and the reason is probably because there are faces in between. Yeah, as you can see here, those faces are straight inside my volume. So sometimes you have a little bit of cleanup work to do, and I only need to select those, remove the faces, and some are left here. There's one. And there's one. Yeah. Oh, what's that? Oh, there's a small gap. Huh. How much do you guys actually make use of the 3D cursor for modeling? Little bit? Rigging? It is actually for modeling when you have to work precisely, and in particular when you also work with symmetrical object, it's really the hit to use. Because let's say this point is vertical straight at one position where I want to move all the points to. I could, for example, select that point, Shift S, and say the cursor should snap to that selection. Now the 3D cursor is exactly at that point. Now I can select all the vertical points, and to make it more clear, on purpose I move these points away, and you know I have to set your pivot point to the 3D cursor. And you see that the 3D widget actually jumped from your selection. I go back to where the 3D cursor is. And if I now press S to scale, but it goes in all directions, and I only wanted to go to the right, which is the X axis, so I press X. And then I can press 0, because 0 means it moves or scales everything straight to where that 3D cursor is. And everything there is now perfectly lined up. Let's say, for example, you have your legs are on different heights, and you want to bring them all on the same level. You could either use the 3D cursor in case you want to bring them to a specific height. Let's say this point is somewhere here and this point is somewhere there, and you want to correct that. You could just select all these points. Again, press S for scale. Now it's vertical, so you press Z. And instead of using the mouse, you could just type in Gesundheit 0. And they're all perfectly at the same height. So when you have a more mechanical object, from a table to spaceship, or you need something precise, or where you work with loop cuts, and somewhat your loop cuts start to shift, that is a really nice tool to clean those up. And basically the way how this chair started being modeled was just taking one sheet, one rectangle, and then extruding it step by step into the particular directions. And does anybody of you maybe knows Charles Eames? It's a very popular chair from that period. It's basically just one sheet of plastic that deform it into that shape. And here again, it's nothing else than starting with a rectangle. So from here, and it's always good when you can take pictures of a product or an object as references, a good side view, a good front view, a top view. And whenever you take a picture, never get close with the camera, because then you have a very strong perspective distortion. Try to stay as far away and zoom in, because whenever you zoom in, your pictures will lose their perspective distortion. Or if you want to model a head, take pictures from a distance. Just have that person rotate like in 45-degree steps, and don't move around the person. And for example, to model this one, I can start in very basic steps, and let me turn on subsurface. Now here, for example, I want to bring it closer down, so I add another loop cut. This area in the front, I want to tighten it a little bit. I add a loop cut. The lower area I want to be sharper. And you can now see that the chair is completely flat. Most chairs, they're a little bit curved. So I go in and add a loop cut at the center. And now you can start taking points and moving those step by step to give your complete chair the required curvature. For example, here this is a little bit too tight. Do you know edge slide? Oh, you guys don't know it. You know what the loop cuts are. The problem is if I move the loop cut now, you see that the points just where they are, they move. Edge slide, actually, when you have an edge and you have one point, it moves the points percentage-wise. Yep. So, and you find it under, space and edge slide or Control E. Well, there are so many ways to enter those. And you see also the points basically move between these 2 points. I can't move the points up. And to give you a better example, let's put it this way. And now this point I move down. So if I move it just straight up and down, you see that here the points touch. On the left side they don't. On the left side they touch. On the right side they don't. However, with loop or slide loop slides, see what happens? So it's all percentage wise. So that's quite a useful tool. And so here, for example, I move it a little bit back, and here at one point, because I want to bring in this curve a little bit more, these points I move forward so the chair arcs a little bit. Maybe bring this point a little bit upwards. And then I hit E again and extrude the sides. Bring this one down. Now I can pick those ones, extrude it down, and I can fill the edges here and fill the gap here. And for example, select all these points here. Move it over. And now I have a small problem because it's not very easy now to connect new faces. I first have to draw actually a corner edge. So from the side view I hit extrude and draw these corner points down, because now I can select again 4 points and patch all those together. And then to give everything a little bit more detail, you could start pushing and pull those more a little bit. Maybe this one here is a little bit way too far. Go to there. So those are also for their furniture students. I have very simple objects to start with, but there are a lot of modeling steps included. I wouldn't be fooled simply by the way it's just only a chair, because there are multiple ways how you can make the chair. In particular, for example, if you want to model a chair which is made out of tubing, bent tubing. No, we don't have one here. And if you select a tube, and I'm just opening the ends, so it's like an open tube. And let's say I'm extruding this one out till here, till there. And now I want to make the tube to go down. So for example, I move this one down. Of course now I have to close that. And it's most of the time always about trying to understand how something is built in reality, and then just simply build it the same way. If you want to model a cell phone, just don't build the cell phone as one object. Build all the different shells. That always helps it to break down the problem. Modeling is a lot about identifying one big problem as smaller mini problems. And If you look at this one, it doesn't really look like a piece of tubing you just bent. Because I made the problem that I extruded one side and then one face I just extruded downwards. And tubing is like an extrusion you just bend. However, this is quite a quick trick to actually get the proportions right. You guys know about snap tool? No? So now I can select these points and move it over to there and snap it. Select these points, move it over and snap it. Remove all the doubles. And now there's a perfectly bent tubing. In case I would try to bend that actually straight alone without this trick, the problem you will end up into if you go to here and you extrude it and you want to rotate it and you think about somewhere in between, rotation must be 45 degree, and then I extrude this one, another 45. Now you see what starts, because basically the pipe starts to collapse. The trick here is actually that this edge where it bends is actually longer than actually the edge where the pipe is just simply and straight. And then basically this one you could just continue with modeling, and for example, let's put this one down. And I have to reset the object center. So I snapped the 3D cursor straight to the end cross section, and I'm going to hit center cursor, which doesn't work in edit mode. So now you see the center point for my object is straight at the end of the tubing. And for example, now I could turn on the mirror. Move it up. And we're getting close to a tubing you guys are sitting on. And then if you take a look at it, you see that the sides are more flat, the top are slightly concave. Then you could go in and, for example, add some loop cuts. So you simulate basically slightly beveled edges. And now already it's more rectangular stock with rounded edges. And if you see at the corner, the tubing collapses slightly. And there you only need one curve inside and there. And for example, pick these points. Oh. And scale them slightly together. And there you see There it's concave, and then there it gets flat. And I guess we're out of time. You hear me?